Okay guys, so what we're going to cover in this video is a grid layout that Kevin Geary has used for this frames template here for a timeline. I think it's a really neat use of grid, and I wanted to work through how you do that without frames in automatic CSS. So we're just going to look at the concepts of grid and how this is achieved. So what I'm going to do is start from scratch, not using ACSS or frames, and see if I can do something similar to this. I'm not going to do exactly the same, just something similar. So let's talk through what we actually have here. We've got a timeline. We've got a staggered content. So we've got left-hand side content, right-hand side content. We've got a middle line, which has got these bullets or icons. And then there's a center line going down, and then it stops at the last element. Okay. So let's have a look at the actual grid layout for this, and actually look at our layout, have a look at our grid overlays, and what we want to look at is the list item. And you can see there that the way it's been set up is a 11 column grid. So from 1 through to 12, so 11 columns, and the center column has got your icon in it, and a line down the middle which actually extends beyond that row down to the next row. So we're going to work out how to do that as well. And I think that center line there is probably, it's a pseudo selector, so using the before pseudo selector. And what else do we need to know about this? The structure, so typical of ACSS and frames, with accessibility in mind. It's a list, so make it a list. So it's actually an ordered list here with list items. And then the rest of it is just the list grid for each one. And then we've got our content. And we've actually got some extra elements here for the headings. I'm not going to go into that depth. I'm just going to look at the layout, not really the style as much, but just how you'd lay it out. Okay, so that's what we're going to build. So let's see how we actually do this. Actually, one more thing I should say is one other cool thing about this structure is that when you look at this at a mobile, so I'm looking at it 767, what happens is my content all goes to the right, my timeline goes to the left, 768, it goes staggered. So just by changing some properties for our grids under a media query. So how is that? I'm not going to go into it. I actually really scratched the surface on this. So I'm going to try and build something like this without using their exact code. And it's going to take me a bit, and I'm probably going to make some mistakes, but bear with me. All right, so here is a blank editor with a single section and single container. So what I'm going to start with is a div. So I'm going to put a div there, and I'm going to make that a OL, ordered list, and change this to a custom, make that OL, and then we're going to add, just duplicate that, drag it underneath, we're going to make that a LI. This an LI here. Okay, so this is our very basic structure that we want. So what we wanted to do is give this a BIM class name. So I'm going to make that, I'm going to use an external class name because using X dash, because what I would typically do is take this out of bricks and stick it into an external class manager. So code manager. I'm going to call this X timeline. I don't know what we call this, alternate. Timeline alt, there we go. So that's our X timeline alt. We're then going to go to our list item, and we're going to call this a LI or row, whatever you like to call it. I just call it an LI because that's what it is. And on that LI, we need to create 3 more divs. Actually, we'll make them, not sure we'll make them divs or blocks. Let's actually just put them as divs for the moment. We can always convert them. I'm going to use divs No, I'm going to use blocks so I get the flex straight away. So 1, 2, 3. So these are our blocks. And on the first one here, we're going to call that our alt. We're going to call that content. And on this one, we're going to call that alt icon wrapper. Actually, let's call that a wrapper. Let's call it what it is. So it's an alt content wrapper. Actually, we don't need the third one, so let's get rid of that. I'm just going to name these as content and icon. All right. Now, the first thing we want to do with our grid is we want to make that a grid layout. You know, we don't want to get rid of the list style and the padding on that. So what I'm going to do is grab that name. There's multiple ways you can do this. For this, I'm not going to use the CSS here, because if I use root, if I use that class name there, Bricks will automatically convert that to root, which is relative to that class, I understand, but then you can't use it externally. So what I'm going to do is go up one. I'm going to put this, and I'm going to just put in brackets CSS. I'm going to put my CSS on this one so it doesn't convert the name to root. There's my timeline alt, and we know it is a ordered list, so let's just target that, and let's set the list style to none. So we've got rid of our number 1 up there. We're going to set the padding to 0 and margin to 0. So we don't have any padding or any margin on it. Okay. So there's the basics for the timeline alt at this stage. Now on the li, which is the first li, we want to actually change that to a grid. We're going to grab the class name there, back up to our CSS container there. I'm going to set that to display of grid, and we're going to set the did I spell that incorrectly? I did. Display of grid, and let's set the grid template columns. Let's do, I can never remember which way around it is. I think it's 11 and then 1FR. Yep, so we've got 11 at 1FR. Okay, and I think we want to stretch the items too. So is it a line item stretch? I think it might be. You can always come back to this in the Chrome DevTools if this isn't correct. What we're telling it is that we want each of these, regardless of their content, to be the same height. Okay, right, so there's our basics. Now, what we want to do is, by default, we want to set this one here. Remember, we've got 11 column grid. So we want the first left-hand side, we want to be 5 of those. The icon wrapper we want to be 1, and then the right hand side we want to be 5. So let's go to the first one, content wrapper. Name. I'm going to set that the, what do they call it? The grid column. I wish there was better auto completion in this bricks here, because it is capable if they add it. So we want to go from 1 to 6, I think it is. They do, yeah. So sorry, I always keep forgetting you, because it's 1 base, not 0 based. You've got to go from grid row 1 to grid row 6, or grid column 1 to grid column 6. So that's the first one, and this one here we don't need to worry because that's already going to be 1. Now let's have a look at some content inside that wrapper. Let's stick a basic text in there, and we'll just put today's date in Australian format. So I'm going to go, what is today, 16th? There's my date. Let's stick a rich text in there underneath that, and there we go. All right, so there's a few things we're going to have to change here for the styling, but let's look at that a little bit later. Actually, let's change. What do we end up with over here? There's a header first. Okay, let's stick a header in there, or heading. So we've got a heading there, and that's our basic heading. Now I'm not going to stick BEM classes and style. I'm even going to bother trying to style all this. We just get it working, and then I'll just work on the basics of the alignment. Okay, so that's for that. Now in the icon wrapper, all we want to do is add an icon and select our icon, give it a what do we got there? Themify, maybe the solid. Some solid. That'll do. There's our icon. All right, and we'll set the size of that to be maybe 40. Okay, so there's our icon, but you see it's not centered. We want it centered in that row, in that cell. So I'm going to grab that icon wrapper class. I'm not sure if we did that before. The icon wrapper, no, we didn't. We did something with the content wrapper. And can't remember what the property is. So let's have a look at it. We grab that whole column there. There it is there. This is a really cool tool in Chrome. If you're not sure, just go into that the element inspector, select what you want. Bring up your flex there. There's my align there. That didn't work. We want to try this align here. Align items there. There we go. So it's actually what we're looking for is align items. Pinch that back to my CSS here. Line the items. So that's now centered it in that there. All right, now when we get back to this, I'm just going to make sure we style this all properly first. And then once we've done with that, then I'll duplicate that, and then we'll just look at how we're going to actually manage the next row. Okay, so we're getting there. We're getting there slowly. Now, what I'm going to do now is look at the 4 element on this. Actually, what we need to do is set some variables. So I'm going to do a maybe center line width. Or maybe let's make a nice bold one, 3 pixels. Center line color. And I'll make that say just yellow. In reality, you'd use probably a variable like an ACSS variable or a bricks color variable. And what else do we want? I guess we need to know a gap between those. So let's do a gap, row, gap of, let's make it 40 pixels. All right, now Display grid. Okay, we'll come back to this when we look at the rows. But okay, so that's that. Now let's look at the icon. We want to actually look at the wrapper. And then the before. We're going to set this to relative. We're going to position the before. In the wrapper, we're going to set that to content. Position, absolute. Now we need to set some properties. So let's go to background color. Of the variable from above there, which was this centerline color. The width. Yeah, centerline width. Let's set the top to 0. Left. We're going to do a calculation on this. So we're going to do a calc of the 50% minus var centerline width divided by 2. For the moment, I think I'm just going to set bottom. I'm going to change this to 0. Okay, that gives us a line, but it's off center at the moment. No, it's not. It's just the icon there. All right, so that's no good for us just yet. Let's have a look at that bottom. We'll come back to the bottom because we need to extend, including the row. Actually, we can do that now. Let's have a look at the bottom being as calc. Var times minus 1. var row gap times minus 1 should extend it 40 pixels beyond the bottom. Did. So there we go. Now we've got the line is sitting on top of the icon, which is what we don't want. So let's set our icon wrapper to isolation. And again, I'm just making this up as I go. I'm not actually looking at how they've done it in frames and duplicating it. I'm just working out a way of doing this as I go. They may have done it a better way. It doesn't really matter. It's just working through the idea. I'm going to set the Z index on this. The -1. So what that does is the so that puts the before pseudo element underneath the icon, but it doesn't disappear behind any other content because our isolation is set to that box there. So it's -1 Z index is relevant to that box only. That's what that's all about. Okay, now I think in the other one we had a border around it, and then we also had the icon is a different color, didn't we? So let's have a look at how we do that. So the border, icon wrapper, is this whole wrapper, isn't it? So if we look at the icon there, let's give that a BEM name. Icon. Here. Okay. Okay, let's set some stuff here. So let's go font size. We'll override the other one. Do we want to do that? No, we want to be able to control that from the Bricks UI, so I won't change the font size. Let's put the padding on it of, say, 1 rem. The icon. Padding of 1 rem, so that's just... Ooh, why didn't that work? Icon. Why not save that? There we go. Come back to our class. I forgot to press the enter key when I put the style on that, the class on that. Okay, so we want padding of 1 rem, background color. Oh, let's make it a, I don't know, 666. There you go. Set an aspect ratio of 1 to 1, so it's square. And then set a border of 50%. There we go. So we've got a round circle here now. And then if we change that icon using the UI, if we change the size of that to say 20, then it all just fits in with it. So actually, let's leave it on 20. That looks like probably a better size for us. All right, so we're getting there. So there's our starter. What else do we need to do? Let's have a look at our CSS. All right, so that's our basic starter. Do we need to do anything else? Probably need to do some alignment on this, but we won't worry about that just yet. Let's do that. On that content wrapper, back to that content wrapper. Let's set a text align. Right, everything's aligned to the right. That's a simple way of doing it, I guess. All right, now we've done our basic CSS. Let's duplicate this li, and there we go. So we've got an li there, but we haven't got the spacing in between. Come back to our ordered list, which is the timeline alt, and we want to change a few things here. So we want to set timeline alt. Let's move those up to the top, which makes more sense. Oops. All right, so let's make this a display of flex, flex direction of column, and a row gap of row gap. Where's our row gap? Here we go. Here we go. So you can see now we've actually got a row gap between these two LIs, and that line here extended because we've told it to go the same pixels beyond the bottom as what we've set the row gap to. So that makes sense now. All right, so now what we need to do is look at how do we do two things. One is how do we get rid of this last one? So let's have a look at the structure we've got there. We've got, if I look at my allies, and then I've got a icon wrapper and number 4. That makes sense. If I go in here, icons. So let's grab the wrapper, icon wrappers, ally. Try this. So let's go select the allies. Probably organise this a little bit better once we tidy this up. Allies, let's go last of type. Last of type. And then from the last of type, we want to go to the icon wrapper for and maybe we'll set that to a display none. There we go. So I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it or not, but setting it to display none, it's got rid of it on the last one for us. So basically looking at our allies, get the last one, get the timeline wrapper before on that and set it to none, which is the yellow line that we've got there. Right, so that's the first bit done. Now let's have a look at the alternating of these and see how we can do that. So what we're going to do now is look at, again, we want to do a nth of type, I think. So let's do a timeline ally, and then we'll do an nth of type. And I think we can just do even, because we want to target the even ones, right? Nth of type even, and then we want to target the we're going to have a problem here, which I'll have to come back and fix. So we're going to have to target the, let's fix this now. So what I forgot to do is put this in a defined position. So if I change this to the other side, that's just going to move to the far left. So let's go back to my icon wrapper. And I've got that content wrapper. So we want to go from 6 to 7. So we're going to go grid column on that one of 6 to 7. You can write 6, span 1, 6, whatever. So I'm just going 6 to 7. So that's putting it from 6 to 7. Always from 6 to 7 in that 11 column grid. All right, now I can do the nth type even on the ally. And then we want to look at the content wrapper. Nth of type even on the ally, and then the content wrapper. Whoops. There must be a content wrapper up here. We can grab. Yeah, grab that one if you didn't copy it properly. The content wrapper. What we're going to do is change where that sits. We're going to change that to, instead of being 6, 7, let's have a look at that timeline again. So instead of being 6, 7, we want to go from 7 through to the end. So let's go 6, 7, we'll go grid, column, seven to end. There we go. Now also, I think, where did we do the left aligning from? Sorry, the right aligning from here. Here's my text align. Put that on the concept. Okay, so now we can change that. Oops. Change that here. So I'm going to text align on that one. I'm going to make that text align left. All right, there we go. Now what I haven't done is added my icon. I think it's that one there. Put that in the wrong place. Why is that on another row? Why is that gone down to the next row? Icon. I'm trying to think why that has happened. I'm going to save this and just preview it and have a look at what's going on in the grid. See there straight away, it's adding an extra. line on that second one is that it must be because this is actually after that, so it's wrapping it around. So I need to set the row. So let's have a look at how I would do that. So if I went to this grid here, icon wrapper, okay, and I put in, what do they call it? Row, grid row 1. Here we go. I'm just going to set that to grid row 1. The icon wrapper. Okay, grid row 1. Right, so we're getting there. We are getting there. So now we've got this arrangement. If I just duplicate this li, maybe duplicate it again. Working for us. So how did this happen? We've ended up with some left aligned stuff here. So, oh, so it hasn't actually aligned the content in that row. Content wrapper. So we want to set the items to the end as well. That. Content wrapper. Flex in for that. And when we wrap, we want it to go to, so the end of type even. Start. Right, so that's fixed that problem. So now we're aligning correctly. We're going pretty well. We're going pretty well so far. So next thing we want to do is a little bit tricky to do in Bricks, because if I change my breakpoint here, it gives me a new set of rules, and I want to put it all in the same place so it makes sense. But what I can do is just actually put it in here and then copy it out. So I'm just try that. So if I go back to here, and I want to look at that breakpoint, actually, well, let's look at the this mobile landscape breakpoint. So we go to the mobile landscape breakpoint, and what we want to do is we want to actually, let's add this, because we only really want that to be an alternative when it's about over 768. So let's have a look at that. So if I went media of max width, min width of 767 pixels. Now see what happens. There we go. So it's all gone to this side now because of that media query. So once we get over 767 pixels, then this rule will no longer apply. So it's not going to push everything to the, this rule here doesn't apply anymore. It's not going to push everything to the right. Okay, so that's that side of it. Now, what we want to do is that when the media max width is a certain size, we want to change some properties here as well. So let's look at the max width. So the max width of 767. So should we be saying min width 768? I think that's the breakpoint there. So 768 is the min width. 767. There, yep. The 767, we want to go max width of 767. We want the icons to be aligned to the left, not to the right. Let's have a look at that. So 767 was our icon wrapper. Grid column. Again, there might be better ways of doing this. If you've got to grab the icon wrapper. Okay, so we want this to be one span. You can do span one, or you can do 1/2, whichever you like. I'm going to do 1/2. The text align is left. Sorry, this is the icon wrapper, isn't it? Yes, 1/2. That doesn't matter because the content. So that's going to align the text to 1/2 grid row of 1. And what else do we want? We want the alignment of this to change as well. So we're going to align the left content wrapper. There we go. That's the icon wrapper, content wrapper. We want to have that the same as when we're alternating. Probably should have gone the other way around now that I think about it. You work this out as you go and then you just tidy it up a little bit later. So let's change that. There, the content wrapper, go up to the line left and the flex start. And we want the content, so the grid column will be from 2 to the end. Okay, let's see how that works. Perfect. All right, so let's save that. Head back to our front end here. And what we've got is our alternating lines of text over the timeline. The timeline ends at the top of the last item. And if we go to our 768, we've got them alternating. We go down to 767, everything goes to the left. So the icons and the line goes to the left, and the alignment of all of these items is on the right hand side with the text aligned to the left. So we're done. So that's pretty much it. So I hope this helps to work through how this grid system works and the logic of it. I think it's a really neat way of doing it because you can change this so easily just by changing your grids. So in here, if I look at a LI in here, look at my layouts, I show the grid for that. I've got an 11 column grid, my icons in the middle there, my content is going from column line 1 through to 6. I've got nothing from 7 through to end, and then on the next alternating column I'm telling it to go from here, so let's go to the next one. I'm telling it to go from 7 through to the end, and the icon column is going from 6 to 7 on all of these. When we go down to the breakpoint here for 766, what's changing is the icon wrapper is going from 1 to 2, and the content wrapper goes from 2 to the end. And that's pretty much how you change your alignment. So it's a really neat way of just deciding how you're going to align. This is actually a timeline, but this could be anything. Like you could have any content you like, and depending on the width of your screen or the containers or the classes you add, you can move that content around in the grid just by changing these grid column lines of where you want it to appear. What you do need to do is that, because in this case the icon wrapper comes after the content wrapper in the HTML, when you set that to be back from 1 to 2, it will wrap around to another row. So you just have to tell it that it's on the first row, and that's it, solved. So hopefully that's something that is going to teach you a little bit about grid and make sense. I love this idea. I think it's going to give me a lot more flexibility in how I do layouts. So yeah, if you like this kind of thing, hit the subscribe, hit the like. Thank you.